Here we are on location in Silver Spring, Maryland at the Quick Start Real Estate School for this week's Ask Ron. And we have the infamous Wolff Couple with us. Yay. And a special guest, Tony Pearl.
Tony the voice.
That's right.
Who is one of our mentors, is actually what I was trying to get out.
In case you didn't, Tony Pearl.
Tony Pearl.
That's me.
We are in Silver Spring, Maryland. Or Virginia. Where are we?
We're in Maryland.
Maryland.
Outside Washington, D.C.
Yes.
We're not in Washington.
So we're going to get right to it. Question number 1 is from Edgar in Florida.
Edgar.
Hello.
I can easily get from my county a list of all out-of-state owners and a list of all properties that show tax payment for the last year still pending. Is this good information for a marketing campaign to look for potential sellers?
Well, I would sure try it. Number one, they're out-of-town owners. That's enough. But now if they're behind on their taxes, that even helps. And it probably means that their house is free and clear, or the escrow company would be paying the taxes. So yeah, absolutely. Test that list. That might be a very good list.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, especially when the list is free, I think.
Hell yeah.
All right. Question number 2 is from Michael in Texas.
Michael.
He has a scenario about a deal, so there's going to be some numbers involved. I am trying to work out a deal with a seller that is not wanting to sub-to or seller finance, but will lease option the property to me. He owes around $230,000 and will lease purchase it with the option to buy for $240,000 with a 2-year lease and a 1-year renewal if needed. The ARV is around $260,000 as of now. Michael's question is, can I acquire the property under a lease purchase with the option to buy, move into the property like a year or two, put it on the market to sell to another end buyer for, say, example, $265,000?
So he wants
Yeah.
to.
That's
Yeah.
of course. But you're not going to know how much you're going to be able to sell it for in 2 years until you see what the price is worth.
We've only got 2 years.
Yeah, I'd like to get a longer term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I would
Like
too.
that. 2 years with one more.
Yeah, he's got
renewal.
he's got 3 years. He could probably move into it for about 1 year and leaving his lease purchase tenant 2 years. But this is something we talked about from stage today. We tell you to program into your dream system about 18 months from when your agreement with the seller for financing will end. So if you have 5 years from a seller, at 3.5 years, you should get a reminder from the dreams and say, hey, call Mr. Seller and try to get an extension. If you have 3 years and you've been making the payments well up to now for 18 months, there's a real good chance they'll give you more time. But you know, if you're going to move into it, that's a scenario that is a doable scenario.
Well, I'd have to find out why you want to move into it, because that just delays the sale, and I assume that is your end goal here. Now, there's no tax advantages to this because you don't own the house. So moving into it doesn't accomplish anything except give you a place to live for a year. I think I'd rather go sell a house, get some cash, and find someplace else to live instead of complicating the deal. Besides, another problem, I don't know what's going to happen in the market. I think I'd rather get that thing out of here now while the market's up instead of taking a chance to come down later.
Good point. We just
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
And I hope he didn't mean that he's going to put up $10,000 now. $240 is fine, but it's $240 when you get cashed out. Don't give him any money.
That's right.
Okay. So the next question on this week's Ask Ron is from Kimberly in Indiana.
Kimberly, okay?
Kimberly says she talked to a man that is selling his home that needs a little work and it is a great location. The only problem she sees so far is that it is in a 100-year floodplain. Should she try to make the deal or run away?
You mean swim away because it's in a
It'd be
floodplain,
swim
right?
away,
Swim away. Or
She wants to run away.
What do you think?
I wouldn't see why not. What are the issues with the floodplains? Are houses selling there? Are people doing business there? Are people living there?
Of course.
Of course.
What
So
do you think?
We've dealt with a lot of students in Baton Rouge and New Orleans who've gone through some huge flooding issues. And guys, these houses come back.
Yep.
Houston, too.
And there's flood insurance. And so it might be, check how much the flood insurance is, because that's going to be the determining factor more than your, maybe unfounded worries about a floodplain.
Floodplain wouldn't bother me one bit. Notice the 100-year part.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I
Maybe they're
don't
due.
think you're ever gonna have to worry about it. Yeah, I'd do it in a heartbeat in there.
okay, what about if it was a 50-year?
Depends on what year I'm in.
Climate change.
I'm in year 49, maybe not.
We're in the 48th year.
Okay, the next question is from Yvonne in Washington, D.C.
Hey, local.
Right? Are you at the quick start right now?
Should be here.
She should be here.
That's
Maybe
right.
she is.
Is she here?
No,
We haven't not seen a Yvonne, no.
no.
Mm.
Okay, her question is, can a tenant buyer or other private buyer pay off the house within less time than the allotted time?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the idea.
Come on, Yvonne.
Come on,
You still really mean that, do you?
she really needs to come to the quick start.
All right,
Yeah.
answer the question for her.
If you have an agreement with the seller for a certain time frame, say 3 years, 4 years, 5, let's say 5 years. Obviously, you want to get your tenant buyer to cash out within that time frame, not go longer. That's the goal, so yes.
The question was, can they cash it out quicker? They can cash it out
Yes.
the day after they sign a lease if they
Right.
want to. Anytime they want, up to the deadline.
And when you get really good seller financing, you actually want to discourage that. So people who have, really
complicated.
questionable credit, those are the ones we
It's
like.
complicated.
Okay, well, she has a second part to her question.
Oh,
How does the buyer qualify as homeowner and build equity?
They don't until they buy the house. Because we're lease optioning it to them and they don't get any equity when they're lease optioning and they don't get any credit toward the purchase price.
that's right.
They want equity, they need to go to the bank, get a loan, then they can start getting equity.
Right, but to start to build equity, they are going to have to own it, and so they have to get qualified. Usually the people we work with are not qualified moving in, so usually the answer is credit repair to get them to the point.
Get them qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're
To
going to
get
have to
them
go through
qualified.
some kind of credit repair.
That's screenthetenant.com.
Well, of course, whatever they put down as a non-refundable down payment, the option consideration goes towards the purchase price when they
Right.
exercise that option.
Right.
That's the only equity that they have, unless you give them rent credit.
Okay, the next question is from Lloyd in Illinois.
Hey,
Hello,
Lloyd.
Lloyd.
Okay, Illinois passed Bill SB-1872 on August 13th, 2019. The bill makes a broker's license a requirement and levels severe penalties for any violations. What can wholesalers do as a result? I am thinking of using transactional funding or raising private funds to close the transactions. However, I have no desire to become a realtor.
I don't know what the question is.
I guess she's asking about the bill.
Yeah, well, what about the bill? You didn't tell us what the problem is within the bill.
Actually, the bill says, and they are defining what a broker is in this bill.
Oh.
And they say a broker is defined as, and they have a whole bunch of clauses under there. And now they've added this clause, which is a broker is defined as anybody who goes out there and buys properties from owners and then quickly turns around and sells them for an assignment fee. And they're pretty specific about it. They're talking about wholesales. And so it's in there.
Have you seen the bill?
Yes.
Have you
I
read the bill?
it. Yes.
Okay. Well,
I've read it.
I would need to see the bill and I would start with the exceptions. And I'd also look for the words "for others." Because if it's for others, it doesn't even apply to you, because you're doing it for yourself.
But when you're talking about doing some of the things that you're talking about, like transactional funding,
I don't know what that has to do with their question.
well, then it's not a wholesale. If they're buying it,
Yeah.
then they're not assigning the contract. But then you're taking on, you have to pay for a double close, basically, or some closing costs. But that is the way around that.
Well, frankly, I need to see the bill.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you send me the statute that just passed? And let me take a look at it, if you will,
You got that, Lloyd?
for the sake of everybody in the state.
Yes.
Okay, Lloyd, that's your assignment.
That's right, Lloyd.
Or you can just move.
Lloyd, if you don't do it, you're gonna have Nikki on your case. That's gonna be-
Oh, yeah.
That's
I don't want that.
The next question is from Bill in Virginia.
Bill?
Bill.
All right.
You mentioned the importance of using an attorney to protect us and to potentially represent us.
Yep.
After an attorney says he will do our type of deals that you teach us, do we need to ask, will represent me?
Ask if he'll represent me?
Will you represent me?
Will you represent me?
I assume you mean,
Oh.
he's a real estate closing attorney, but then if you get into litigation, will he represent you? That's a good question. And if he doesn't, he will refer you to somebody that does.
But if you're just using him to do your real estate closings,
Yeah.
I don't believe you need to ask him that question
Oh, no.
because he's not, you're only
No.
hiring him to do the
But
closings
for
for
real
you.
estate closing attorneys do not do litigation. That's the
Ah,
question.
that's a good question, Bill. Okay, so our final question for this week's Ask Ron is from Brent in Canada.
Canada.
Hi, eh?
How's it going, eh?
Eh?
Okay, so
Trying to
his,
be funny, Brent, it ain't working.
yeah, they don't even have the accent. Well, they should, they're from Minnesota.
You can get
You
it.
should know what you're talking about.
Okay, so his first part of his question is, for a sandwich lease option deal, the monthly payment that I get from the buyers covers the seller's PITI, but what do you do about utilities?
Well, the
What I-
the lease purchase buyer covers utilities.
Whoever's living in the house
Living
paying
in the
utilities.
house, the lease purchase buyer would cover it.
They don't stay in the seller's
Yeah.
name. Whoever's living in the house will
So,
pay the utilities.
and they would pay him. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seller's gonna turn them off, your buyer's gotta turn them on.
Yeah, because the next part, he's asking, do you leave it in the seller's name?
No.
No.
Of course not.
No.
Okay, and the next part of his question, for a sandwich lease option deal, what sort of arrangement do you make with the seller about getting a copy of the keys?
Oh,
If you are leasing it from the seller, you have every right to get the key, period. And you should to change the locks anyway,
yep.
so that nobody has them but you until you give them to your tenant buyer, and then I tell them to change the locks too and send you a key. But, and then if your seller wants a key, go ahead and send them a key. It's them that's getting a copy of the key, not you. You're getting the originals, but who cares?
Or you could install electronic locks.
Or
I
you
love
could,
those.
actually,
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
That's a new thing too.
Yeah.
Love those.
In fact, I just put a lock on my door, it's all combination.
Yeah.
I can change that combination every time, don't even have to worry about keys.
Yeah.
I like it, I don't have to go fumbling around for my key and stick it in
They
the
do
lock.
that with Airbnbs.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning when I come in drunk and. Just kidding, I don't drink.
After eating cilantro?
Come stumbling into. That's the end of that.
You're looking at that, you're thinking about that, aren't you?
Okay, people, let's focus. That was the final question for this week's Ask Ron.
All right,
That was fun.
Yes.
so all right, hey, you guys need to look up Quick Start Real Estate School if you want to get this business. We're sitting here with a group here right now in Tony's town. And boy, we've got some active people and they're bringing in some good deals, and we're gonna be looking at some really good properties tomorrow on the bus as well. So come on, get in this boot camp if you wanna do this business. I'll see you next week. Go get something going.